It's been a little bit since I decided to do one of these chat about videos, but I thought of a topic that I felt kind of passionate about for a while now, and I was like, okay, well, let's do it. So today we're going to talk a little bit about roadkill. And I thought about this while I was driving home from Mount Union because I was doing Professor Wu a favor interviewing a candidate, and I saw like 3 different dead possums, raccoons, a deer, all sorts of stuff. 183, you've always seen a lot of roadkill, and every time I see one, I think about it. Sometimes I think more, sometimes I think less, but I always notice them and I always think about it. It makes me a little sad. Part of the reason I've had roadkill on my mind a lot lately is because I recently got a small comic from an artist I found, Carrie Spiller, and the story's called Rays. It's about these forgotten gods of nature having sorrow at the hubris of man and all this lost life due to this on the sides of roads, and creating this new god that spends time with all these passing creatures, so at least they're not alone. And eventually it like tears up like all the roads and shows that no man is greater than the gods. So it's a neat story, neat art, but it really resonated with me because you can tell the artist has a lot of contempt with roadkill as a whole, and I feel very similarly. And I just thought I'd go into some of my own stories about roadkill. One of my earliest memories about it is we were heading back from a Renaissance fair. It was me, my dad, the family friend Leo, and Sam. I was maybe 10, couldn't have been that old. It was the heat of the summer, we were driving back, and we got stuck in this massive traffic jam. We were stuck there for like an hour and a half, because I guess somebody had an RV that had flipped sideways and was blocking like both lanes. So it was just sitting under a bridge. And I remember like 30 minutes into sitting there, we're kind of going stir crazy because it's a 10-year-old stuck in a car. And I look out the window, I'm like, Dad, what is that? He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, there's a bunch of flies around this thing. And we get out and we look at it, and it's the mostly desecrated remains of a fox. And I remember being sad because once my dad told me it was a fox, I was like, that's not what foxes are supposed to look like. Seeing that and knowing it was a fox, it was kind of upsetting, kind of confusing. And it was like, okay, I knew things died. Our dog had died by that point, but I hadn't seen something decay. I hadn't seen it flattened and deformed like that. And it kind of stuck with me for a while. I can't tell you anything about that Ren Fair, but I remember that fox. I think the only thing that I've ever actually hit, thankfully, is a single monarch butterfly. It was a couple years ago, driving home, going, just normally on, it actually might have been on 183, and just a nice big monarch went right in front of my car, and I watched it tumble to the ground as I drove past. And I don't think I cried, but I nearly did, which to most people might sound stupid. It's like, Emily, it's a butterfly, but any life is valuable, and me just trying to drive ended one. And that sucks. That really sucks. I try to be more careful now. I break for butterflies and squirrels and anything. But I guess that's the only thing I've ever hit, and I kind of hope it's the only thing I ever do hit. My mom told me that when first animal she ever hit was a robin. Hit her car when she was on the highway. Back in her university days, I think college. And she said she just pulled over and held it and, sobbed. And I remember Sam hit a bunny, a summer or 2 ago. He did the same thing. And Sam's not very neighborly, but I think hitting anything and knowing that that blood is on your careless hands can move anybody to tears. But I also think that a lot of people are so desensitized to it. I think even I am. I see something, I get sad for a second, and I keep driving. It's just a little sad that so much life is lost, and no one really even cares. Next I had Chris Stanton. Last summer he actually spent a couple months with raising a raccoon. that he found orphaned on the side of the road because its mother had been hit. It was a cool experience. Not everybody gets to raise a raccoon. And he let it go after a little bit. But the fact that a person had to do it at all is really sad. When you think about all the things that don't get picked up by someone else or a wildlife rehab place. And they're just going to die because their parent also died. Another one I had, and hopefully I'll remember to put a picture here. The apartments we live in right now, there is a possum that comes by. We didn't see him most of the winter, but we originally started seeing him because we have this like bin outside where we keep all the dog's poop that we pick up. And sometimes the bin will be knocked over, and some of the bags will be shredded, and some of the poop is missing, which is a little gross. But eventually we ended up seeing him a couple times, and there's this possum that comes by. Sometimes it'll eat, like mess with the bird seed. It'll just wander around, because there's an abandoned golf course next to us, so I think he hangs out over there. We started calling him Reggie, and it was always fun when Reggie comes by, because it was like personal zoo time, because I would sit at the sliding glass door and look out and try to make sure he doesn't notice me, and I get to be within a couple feet of a possum, and he doesn't really care. So we really like Reggie. But maybe a month ago, there was a pretty decently sized possum dead in the middle of the road, maybe like just down the street from where we live. And I was with Robert, and he mentioned, like, Emily, what if that's Reggie? And as much as I've been impacted by other roadkill experiences, that one really hurt. It was like seeing a dead cat on the side of the road. It hurt a lot more than just a random raccoon. And we don't even know if it's Reggie, because since then we've actually had like 2 nights where the dog poop was shredded, but we don't know if it's him. We don't know if it's a cat or a raccoon. But it was like losing a friend to no control. It just makes you really sad. Probably one of my most impactful roadkill experiences was last summer. I was working at the nature center, and it was towards the end of the day, like a weekday. And I remember I was the only one there for some reason, so it might have been a weekend. And I got a call on the phone, somebody saying, "Hey, I just drove past your nature center, and there's a dead deer right on the side of the road, like right by your sign. You know, you might want to move it. It kind of looks bad." So I was like, "Oh, okay." I drive over on the 4-wheeler. It's right on the side of the road. And I stop. It's probably only been dead a couple hours. It's still kind of warm. And it's a deer. And it's clearly pregnant. And I just stood there and looked at it for a little while. And then I drug it by myself into the woods nearby, so it at least wasn't on the side of the road, and maybe something could decompose it, get some new life out of it. But I remember standing there after trying to cover it as best I could with some leaves and some sticks, and actually saying a prayer for the first time since I was like 12, when I stopped believing in God. I don't even think I was praying to God or any God. I was just thinking to myself that if there is some soul or higher being or something beyond the mortal flesh, I hope that that deer and its unborn kids can at least nourish something else. And I just remember being so sad and angry at the indifference of humans, the hubris. And I'm no better. I drive. I hit a monarch. My mom hit a deer once. It's just really hurt. Because I know I'm the only one that cared. And if that random guy hadn't called me, no one would have cared.
The camera out of me flies off.
I know death is part of life, especially in nature, but these are natural deaths. And that's why they hurt so much. There's no need for it. And half the time, things that rot on the side of the road don't even feed nature as they should. The beetles can't get to them. A lot of times, other things that are trying to eat them end up getting hit themselves. It's just terrible.
There it goes.
The last story I had, actually kind of ties a lot of this together, and is another reason that Roadkill makes me really upset. Is last summer when Robert and I were driving down to, or I guess over to Missouri and Kansas City to see Kimmy, Brendan, and Dina. We're having a good road trip, and I mentioned to Robert as we were getting closer to Missouri, man, I really hope we see an armadillo. I've always wanted to see a wild armadillo. I think they're funny little creatures. And maybe like 10 minutes later, we just crossed the Missouri border, and there's a armadillo dead on the side of the road. Just completely crushed. It looked like if you stomped on a pill bug, but with legs and more entrails. And I don't think I cried, but I got really upset. I kind of tried to play it off as a joke, but I was really upset. And ever since then, it's made me think that the first time you see a creature, shouldn't be dead on the side of the road. I always wanted to see an armadillo. I never saw a live one. I saw like 6 or 7 dead ones. I think about kids nowadays who will probably go most of their life seeing only dead raccoons, turkeys, geese, possums, long before they'll see a live one. And that's just really wrong.
Whoa, hey, easy, dude.
It's really wrong. It makes me sad. So, I have hope that someday things will get a little better. Maybe cars will have systems in them to help stop roadkill. Maybe people will be a little more aware, or roads will be designed a little better to leave wildlife corridors or slow people down. I don't know if that'll be in my lifetime. I kind of doubt it, but I hope that these animals can maybe adapt in some way to get used to the hubris of man. And I really hope that Reggie's still out there. I know they only live a few years. He's already full grown, so I don't know if Reggie's still here, but I hope Reggie's still there. Yeah. So, future Emily, slow down when you're driving, especially in a park. Sometimes one of the best ways to see wildlife is when it's crossing the road.